no idea. I think we're going to have to get an interpreter soon to understand the mixed messages on this one. I'll come back to that. Let's start off with some basics like it is Monday. We have a mixture of sun and clouds today. Going to be into the 80s, another warm one, and enjoy it as we get 10 days into August. We're just about 9:08 a.m. Some more primaries tomorrow in certain states. Paul Steinhauser will be joining us live. He's live now with us. He reports nationally for Fox News Digital. Good morning, New Hampshire, the pulse of an age. Let me just also identify that we are coming to you with additional FM strength up into Maine with 2 FM signals, the Lakes region, and of course, Central Corridor, 107.7 FM, 107.3 FM, 98.3 FM HD2, 98.7 FM HD2, 98.1 FM, 1270 AM. And worldwide, hey Google, hey Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. That's good AI, as they say. No, I'm just kidding. On the Pulse of an H, we're just about everywhere. Listen to us streaming or on your phone, whatever you're doing. Download the Pulse of an H app as well. But our poll question on X this morning at the Pulse of an H, we're going to keep it light. Big Powerball tonight, and just curious if you buy those big tickets. Are going to buy a Powerball ticket, yes or no? And it's a big one tonight. And good luck, J-Dog. I don't know if you want to field the results from Friday, or we can do it in a little bit.
No, now.
Okay, take it away.
The job market in New Hampshire softened a bit. 75% saying no, 25% saying yes. That was Friday's poll question.
Interesting, because we had that jobs report. Doug Tengden will be weighing in a little bit. Paul Steinhauser, that means primaries, that means you're on the road. And tell us about the states. Of course, I'm still looking back in amazement on Michigan. Take it away, Paul. Good morning.
Yeah, Jack, 1 week after Abdul El Sayed won that big Michigan Democratic Senate primary, razor-thin margin, but it was a huge victory for the far left in their battle with the establishment for the future of the Democratic Party. Well, here we go again. 1 week later, we got 2 big showdowns. I'm here in Wisconsin, just outside of Milwaukee. That's where Democratic Socialist of America member Francesca Hong, she's a state rep out here from Madison, Wisconsin. She is the front runner right now in the Democratic primary for governor. And a lot of Democrats are concerned that if she wins, that kind of opens the door for hard right Tom Tiffany. He's a House Freedom Caucus member, real tight with President Trump. And Democrats are concerned that if she wins the primary here, Jack, Republicans have a really good shot at flipping the governor's office. Meanwhile, in neighboring Minnesota, another showdown between the far left and the center. This for the Senate nomination on the Democratic side in Minnesota. Their Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan is the progressive candidate. Angie Craig, the congresswoman, is the more moderate. So here we go again, Jack, just like last week, big showdowns.
Yeah, interesting, Paul. And I don't know if there's a common denominator. You know, each state is different, clearly, coming out of these. But we continue to see a very divided Democrat Party. And I'm not sure on the Republican side on some of these, you know, are there a lot of these candidates running as Republicans? Are they big supporters, consistent supporters of President Trump, or are there some independent type Republicans in some of these primaries?
No, I'm glad you brought that up because it's also primary day in South Carolina. Again, they're having a special primary tomorrow. Remember, 1 month ago, Lindsey Graham, sudden death for Lindsey Graham. Now they're having a primary to replace them on the ballot in November. And Trump is involved in this race. He has endorsed and he is backing Darlene Graham, the younger sister of the late senator. But Jack, Trump's endorsement didn't stop others from getting into the race. Okay, they're not running as anti-Trump candidates, but they're definitely in the race. And those are 2 congressmen, Ralph Norman and Russell Fry, and also the former governor down there, Mark Sanford. So, yeah, I mean, there are divisions on the Republican side as well.
Interesting. Yeah, South Carolina is actually quite an interesting state on their political side. Mark Sanford, there's a name. Remember that. Wow. All right. Paul Steinhauser reporting. And by the way, J-Dog and I want to know, where are you this morning or going to be tomorrow?
I'll be in Madison, Wisconsin tomorrow at the Francesca Hong party tomorrow night.
All right. Thank you, Paul. You're the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Paul Steinhauser reporting live nationally for Fox and for us here. Good morning, New Hampshire. Good morning, New England. Good morning, worldwide. Hopefully you're having a good start to our Monday as well. That shelter in place in Durham, you just heard Mike Pomp going into the 9 o'clock hour, has been lifted. There was a situation on Denbow or Denbow Road, Denbow, Denbow or Bow, however you want to pronounce it, road in Durham. And that has been, the shelter in place has been lifted this morning. Don Nelson, I guess we remember both as a player and a coach, J-Dog. He was one of the winningest coaches in the NBA.
One time he was the winningest coach of all time. Greg Popovich, I don't want to say padded the lead, but in 2010, Nelly surpassed Lenny Wilkens as the most winningest coach in NBA history. It's since been surpassed by Popovich. But yes, Nelly was a winner on the court and off the court. Didn't win a title as a coach, but as a Celtics player, first won multiple championships.
And 86, J-Dog, was he?
Yeah, Nelly was 86.
Wow. And some of the other news coming out of the weekend, we'll keep you posted on all of the above. A couple of stories that we're tracking this morning, the political stuff in different states. And of course, we have a later primary here in New Hampshire, but things are going to heat up like the weather as we're not that far away from the primary. And of course, November, the midterm election, a lot at stake, including control of the U.S. Senate, majority in the House, a lot of these races around the country. And you also look at what is going on here in New Hampshire. And it's kind of an interesting, I still think some of our political experts have been spot on. The most activity, it seems, is in that first congressional district here in New Hampshire. You have a crowded Republican primary, crowded Democrat primary. And we'll see where all this goes. The U.S. Senate race will intensify, I think, once we know the general the nominees for the U.S. Senate race on the Democrat side, and I guess the presumptive favorite is current member of the first congressional district, Chris Pappas, the Democrat, and will it be John E. Sununu or Scott Brown? And we'll see. It's hard to. The hard thing in these races is listening to polls and surveys, because that's the only barometer that seems to be out there to say who's doing well, who's doing what, whether you're talking about President Trump's approval ratings in New Hampshire being low or lower, or who's ahead in these races. We meaning you, me, all of us, the only thing you can talk about are these surveys and polls. And the reason why I call them surveys, I don't know if you know this, places like the University of New Hampshire are no longer doing polls. They do surveys because it's so darn hard to actually poll people who are going to vote. Just look at your own life. How many times do you not answer your smartphone if it says spam or someone calling from a university? You just don't answer because you don't know who it is. You don't respond to a text message. And so what they do is they get together, a few hundred people that they think are representative of a bigger population. And then they get them to participate in direct questions, and they do a survey of that polling subset, if that makes any sense to you. So the surveys have been showing Sununu with a lead over Brown, Pappas with a lead in that Senate race. It's hard to tell in that first congressional district what's going on. But what will the reality be? We don't know right now. And there's always a surprise. There's always a surprise in New Hampshire. All right, on this Monday morning, I heard on the news as some of the national news coming in and reading this morning early mixed messages, from the President Trump talking about the war in Iran and what's the latest. Are we semi-negotiating with whoever it is on the Iranian side? Are we fully negotiating, semi-negotiating, half negotiating? This is the most bizarre messaging in some commentary, 603-228-2080, I've seen. And it is a pretty serious situation because of the part of the world it's in. You look at the impact and the confusion over the Strait of Hormuz. Most people before this thing began, about 6 months ago, by the way, if you go back to, was it February 28th? I mean, it's just, it was going to be quick, remember? Just a few weeks, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and it would be over. Then they wanted a deal. They wanted a deal real badly, and then they tell the Iranian spokespeople, whether it's whoever it is on the Iranian side, will tell us, we're not negotiating with the United States. I mean, the latest thing I heard this morning is the demands they want to place on us. Wait a minute. The Iranian hardline Islamic State wants to place demands on us and what they'd agree to? Are you kidding me? And we know we can't trust them. We know you can't negotiate with terrorists. So what the he double hockey sticks is going on here? If it was all over a nuclear deal or to ensure that they were never going to be able to enrich uranium enough to make a nuclear bomb, the president this morning, I just heard one report going into the show this morning that he'd walk away from this thing without a deal with them on the nuclear stop. I thought that was why we fought this thing. I thought that's why the number one issue, and then it all seemed to hover around the Strait of Hormuz, the naval blockade, who was charging, who was firing, trying to get those tankers to pass through. And I'm not saying we didn't try. And then we get mad at the insurers of these tankers who aren't going to send in a huge load of oil or fertilizer with the liability if someone fires a rocket launcher at a tanker. So this whole thing has become one of the bigger messes, and it was one of my fears that it would get convoluted and protracted. And right now, it's hard to tell what is really going on and how do we get out of this thing and what do we declare as success or failure or not. I don't know at this point, but I've never seen messaging that has been so sporadic from, you could go back to different wars in our country and say there were different messages because sometimes the goal line does change and sometimes the variables of a conflict or a war change, but our goals should always be consistent. And it's been hard to tell in the beginning, is this about nuclear and stopping the Islamic State from getting or having a nuclear bomb or capability, or is this about oil in the long run? I can't tell anymore. Some 603-228-2080. Coming up a little bit later on this morning, we'll update you on some of the other news talk, including the economy and a whole lot more. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play The Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.
Register now for the
New Hampshire with Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right. A lot of people are still trying to cram in and get in the vacation time, which is natural. And I can't believe we're 10 days into August, and I don't know exactly when school starts for different people in different districts, but you already can sense people scurrying about, families talking about all the back to school stuff. It seems like we were just beginning summer. You know how that goes, right? And, I think we ended up having a decent amount of warmer weather and summer-like stuff, but it just always goes too fast. And so we'll keep you posted on that. But a lot of people, one of the biggest, unfortunate side effects of the situation in the Strait of Hormuz with the war in Iran and the Iranian situation, or our ambiguity in terms of what we're doing now with this situation, but the Strait of Hormuz and the impact, the impact on oil to begin with, and then gas, and in particular diesel fuel just going through the roof for people who truck and ship. And how much, look at today, how much do we rely on trucking and shipping? You don't realize all that, but everything seems to go that way. The food to the supermarket, you see the big rigs out there in the summer, they're working hard, and you look at the price of diesel and the ups and downs of gas and oil prices, and that's really a direct consequence of the uncertainty in the Strait of Hormuz. As I said earlier, this is going on now closer to 6 months than not, and that's hard to believe. When it started and we got into it, it was only going to be a short-lived war, a short situation, like 4 to 6 weeks or another week or two, or we're close. They want a deal. They're desperate for a deal. We're gonna get a deal. We've destroyed all their military. We've destroyed their navy. We destroyed their capabilities in the Strait of Hormuz, and just we obviously underestimated how decentralized the terrorist nation had become. And I go back to Tim Hafner, our retired fighter pilot expert on my show, Good Morning New Hampshire, a Durham, New Hampshire resident, former fighter pilot, good friend Colonel Hunt Kerrigan may be aware of his friend, and Tim was just an excellent, and has been, and we'll get him on again, but everything he said back in March, in the spring, when this thing was really getting going, he said, he's just candid. He answers questions. He's a fighter pilot. He said, I've never seen a war that was won just in the air without troops in the ground to verify. And I've never seen a war that was just a few weeks or a month old. Usually it's a year or two, and that's very disconcerting. And then you look at the situation that we're seeing with oil and gas, and it is, no matter how you slice it or dice it, and it's weird because you'll see days like last week when the markets are up, the stock market's up, and yet everything else is chaotic and confusing. And gas is, still, more than $4 a gallon of regular gas. Well, over $4. And I already told you about the migraine headache of diesel if you have to buy that for fuel. And, we're not even into the cooler season if you have any kind of oil heating, but we're realizing, and I'm hearing from people in the building industry, that tar, asphalt, paving a driveway right now, that tar is like liquid gold. It's expensive. So some places are turning to more concrete, more dirt and gravel, just because the cost of, the oil goes into make tar. And then we don't realize how the world still revolves and runs on oil and gas, whether you like it or not. I'm not giving you a political statement. The reality is the world runs on oil and gas, and we're seeing that because of the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. And it is, the longer this war goes on, and it makes sense, there are definitely inverse things going on here. I mean, you take a company like Valero or some of the American energy giants, their stock they're huge. They're way up because they're charging more for a barrel of oil because of the global markets. I mean, American energy companies are profiting and making a lot of money right now from the war in Iran. You and I aren't, if you're buying anything, because food, grocery prices, everything goes through the roof when it's costs more to transport, truck, air conditioning, everything. So I don't know about you. Every weekend it seems that you go out and about, things seem more expensive this past weekend to me than they did 4 or 5 weeks ago. The cost of everything is going up. But you look at the defense industry and some big corporate giants that fuel kind of the military industrial complex, and you look at the size of the Pentagon budget. But the more this war goes on, the sad reality is it puts a drag on the economy, because the economy is still driven from consumer confidence and consumer spending. And if people have uncertainty on their minds because of what's going on in the Middle East, because of what's going on in the world, because of what's going on when they go out and put gas in their car or buy groceries, they're gonna pull back. Even if they pause, even if they pull back a little, it's a pullback. And so there's mixed messages coming out. We got some great experts this morning to kind of drill down on this. Jobs report on Friday was not good at all, but yet here locally, I hear from employers that they are hiring here, but they want to find good employees. It's hard to find good employees. It's really hard to find good employees. But the biggest issue I maintain going into these elections here locally, the biggest issue I maintain going to these elections, they're not going to be any one politician or any one debate. It's going to come down to people's economic standing. And do they feel like they're doing okay? Do they feel confident in the economy? The economy and the cost of living, the affordability of everything, and the economy. I think that's the number one issue that most families, as they head back to school and as we look to the fall elections or the midterm, in November, I think the economy is going to be the driver. And right now, for Republicans running, as long as we have the ups and downs of the uncertainty, largely because of the mess in the Strait of Hormuz, largely because of the war in and with Iran, things are going to be expensive if gas and oil are expensive, because it almost drives everything. So groceries are going to be expensive. Food's expensive. Going out to a restaurant, good luck. You got to take out a second home loan to, pay for, if you go out and get a nice dinner, it seems. Energy costs, as I said, overall are up. Everything's up. So I think the cost of living, people's feeling that are they doing okay? Are they making enough to pay the bills? And if they're not going to be too happy about things. And if they look at the war in Iran, they're going to look at the president and this administration, and they're going to say, I don't like this. I'm going to send a message. And that's the challenge a lot of Republicans here in so-called purple New Hampshire are going to face this fall because of that. And does it make the Trump Republican voters stay home? Are they not as energized as the Democrats? But probably the best thing that the Republicans have going right now, despite all those handicaps or things dragging things down, as I said, is the Democrats are so divided in their own politics and their own party. I mean, look at these socialist candidates, the Democrat socialists who are running and winning far left. They call it progressive candidates, and the party's divided over this. And that is probably that's the only balancing thing that's balancing this whole picture out. So when we come back, we'll have some more of our regular contributors, Doug Tengden as well, World Market Advisors. Top of the 10 o'clock, we're going to check in with the folks at the Sea Science Center. That's SEE, like see with your eyes, Science Center in Manchester. And on our Dollar Saver, we got a great deal for a membership at a discounted rate. When you have family and friends and young people, there's a lot to see there, no pun intended. A little bit later on, Rory O'Neill and a whole lot more on what else is going on coming out of this weekend. Hope you had a good one. We're looking at another warm day out there, mixture of sun and clouds, into the 80s for a temperature. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.
News, information, and discussion.
on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, we are back on this Monday. Michael Graham, New Hampshire Journal, nhjournal.com. Couple of interesting questions coming out of his reports this morning, and that is everything from Supreme Court Chief Justice, I guess, on leave, and I don't know if it's health related, as well as more questions on where things are at with the elections coming up this fall. Good morning, Mr. Graham.
You know, when I was doing the podcast this weekend with your friend Scott Spradling, we did a segment. We did a Siskel and Ebert style segment on the political ads that are running. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Just from a pure, do they work? How do they look? Whatever. And we're talking about some of our favorites of all time. One of my favorites, Jack, you've probably seen some campaigns, is the Bloodhound ad. You ever see those? Where you got an office. Yeah, we got somebody who didn't show up missed a lot of votes, didn't show up for work. They don't do constituent service, and so their opponent goes out with "Where's Bill Johnson?" And they release the blood. He's not here at Congress. He's not here at the fire station. And I think it's a great ad. Plus, I love dogs, and we can use a couple of those bloodhounds right now because people are asking, where the hell is Gordon McDonald and where the hell is Joyce Craig? Oh, excuse me. Where are the HE double hockey sticks? I forgot you still say that, Jack. Where the heck, gosh darn it, is Joyce Craig? It is hilarious.
Let's start with that one. I mean, it's interesting. She just obviously decided after falling short in the governor's races last time to Kelly Ayotte to just say, hey, been mayor of the state's largest city, ran for governor, I'm going to take a break. But sometimes she just totally disconnect or they stay involved, and she's not really out there endorsing.
This is brutal. Can you imagine Tom Sherman not endorsing Joyce Craig when she ran for governor? He was the nominee 2 years earlier. Can you imagine Molly Kelly not endorsing Dan Feltus? Now, nobody wanted Dan Feltus' nomination because he's the worst Democratic candidate for governor ever. But, dude, he lost by 30 points, and Biden carried the state by 8. It's the worst performance ever by a candidate for governor. But my point is, everybody, there's no news if Joyce Craig, who lost to Ayotte 2 years ago, endorses the nominee. And she told Warmington to her face, no, I'm not going to endorse you. It's brutal. It's just brutal. And so the question is it because Joyce Craig is a total jerk, which is one of the spins around the mayor's office because she's a total jerk, or is it because Warmington's that bad? And I talked to a political pro, and the answer was both. So, Warmington continuing, what is the first rule of holes, Jack? Jack, the first rule of holes.
Holes?
Holes, Holes. If you're a politician, what's the first rule of holes?
They're not caused by aliens? No, go ahead.
When you're in one, stop digging.
Stop digging deeper.
Instead, Cindy Warmington released a video this weekend sitting on a park bench, which looked like, by the way, it was near Veterans Park in Manchester where all the opioid addicts are, saying, it's not my fault, but I feel bad anyway, and I wish I'd known what I don't know. And she never says, I'm sorry for the role I played in promoting opioids. She never says it, and so she's just keeping the opioid issue alive, and so maybe Joyce Craig is too embarrassed to be seen with her. I don't know.
What's going on?
The much more important one is Gordon McDonald.
Yeah, what's going on with the state Supreme Court?
That is a great question. He doesn't just run the state Supreme Court. He's the top judicial officer for the entire third branch of government. Yeah. And more than a week ago, he just left. No word, no nothing. Just, quote, medical leave. Well, what do you mean medical? Like, are you sick? Are you, what's going on? How long are you going to be gone? When are you coming back? No comment, won't answer questions, won't tell the other members of the court where he's gone. The members of the Supreme Court do not know where Gordon McDonald is right now, and that's just unacceptable. You work for the people. You can't just give the people the Mitch McConnell finger and say, I'm going to leave, I'm going to do what I do, it's none of your business, I'll come back when I want to. Remember Tom Keene Jr. in New Jersey, Jack, earlier this year? Remember Congress leaves for 4 months? Yeah. Never. The House majority is down to 3. Never cast vote in 100 and some days. Comes back, says, I decided to come back. Sucks to be you.
Well, what happens when Gordon McDonald I'm not an expert on the Supreme Court enough. Sure. Who takes over? Another justice must be the acting.
Yeah, they have a fill-in for the moment, but the issue isn't that he needs to leave. The issue is he left and said it's none of your damn business. It's not our business. We're the voters. The governor needs to know, man. The
well, I'm sure the governor.
They don't need to know every. They don't need to know. The governor does not know. I don't think, based on what I've heard, I can't know, but My understanding is literally nobody knows where Gordon McDonald is. He will not give them information other than doctors say he needs to leave. We don't know when he's coming back.
How do you know
That's just not
definitively that
acceptable
the
to me.
governor doesn't know the status?
I don't know definitively, but I'm just saying based on what I've been able to find out. I don't think, based on everything I can find out at NH Journal, doing our reporting, talking to lots of people who are, including close friends of Gordon McDonald, people love the guy. Great guy, nice guy. He's been a terrible Chief Justice, really flubbed a lot of cases, including the Bobby Hans Marconi one. But people love the guy, and they're worried, and no one can.
Well, if we hear and learn, we'll keep you updated. Let me switch gears. I was talking in some commentary a moment ago, Michael Graham, NHJournal.com, on, I hear this from analysts that are pretty sharp at some of this stuff on looking at the Republicans and, the party of Trump locally and nationally, at least in these primaries, and then the Democrats. They say, with the president's approval ratings low, the war in Iran dragging on, the price of gas, that's tough stuff if you're a Republican going into these elections this fall. But the only good thing the Republicans have going for them right now is just how divided the Democrats are as a party. And look at the people who are winning on the far, far, far left side of the aisle. It's beyond what you would call a liberal politician when you're looking at some of these people that are driving the Democrat Party. And my question is, this morning I'm hearing, again, I'm foreign policy wonk on very mixed messages from a frustrated president of the United States saying, I don't know, we're semi-negotiating with him now. I don't care what happens now. I mean, this is bizarre. And as it continues, how much is this war in Iran dragging the momentum that maybe the Republicans had made on certain things like the big, the tax bill, the economy, and now look at how expensive. How big of a drag on Republicans is this factor in the Middle East?
It's terrible. It's all terrible. Look, everything's terrible. Gas prices are terrible. Republicans are at the lowest point with trust on the economy than any time since the market crash and all the 2008 the Great Recession. The worst polling ever. Americans don't trust Republicans on the economy. They don't trust them on foreign policy. Trump has even lost the immigration issue. This is a disaster. I mean, anyone who thinks that Republicans are going to have anything other than a horrible day are not paying attention to the polls. Now, something could happen. Democrats got lucky in 2022, and the Dobbs decision came down, which sent the abortion issue back to the states where it belongs, but it also really re-energized Democrats and got them pumped up, and that helped stop a red wave in 2022. Can the DSA be the Dobbs issue of 2026? Republicans are surely hoping for that. I thought it was interesting. Representative Chris Pappas, running for U.S. Senate, was on your old station this weekend and was asked straight up twice, will you fight this leftward lurch in your party or just go with the flow? Answer, no answer, would not answer. Will you, push back on the El Sayed wing of your party? No answer, no answer. It says to me that even Chris Pappas with, charisma. That's it. Charisma Mansour is.
Boy, you never trip. You never trip.
Well, charisma is an unusual. Anyway, the point is
Charisma Mansour.
Podcast. She's very smart. She is very progressive, but she doesn't have a lot of resources, and most people think she's probably going to struggle to do well against Pappas, and yet he still wouldn't say, "I'm going to do what Maggie Goodlander did. I'm going to sign this Promise to America letter that just says." We believe in, lots of stuff, but we're not socialists. He's not going to do that. Instead, he said, we've got to have a big tent in order to win elections in New Hampshire and across the country. Well, is that big tent big enough for El Sayed? Is that big tent big enough for, the Graham Plattner-style candidates? You'll have to ask Chris Pappas. But if you ask him, are you going to stand up to the progressives trying to take over your party, his answer is to vote present like he did on Aid for Israel.
Mm. All right. Well, Michael Graham, we'll keep warm. Hey, I want to ask you, because you're from South Carolina originally. Does the late Lindsey Graham's sister, go all the way in the Senate race?
It is embarrassing to think that that's possible, but it is definitely possible. I'm hopeful.
Possible or likely?
I would have called it likely a couple weeks ago, but from what I'm hearing from people on the ground, people are starting to finally ask, so why are we voting Does anyone know? Like, is she pro-life? Do we know? Is she pro-Second Amendment? What do we know about this person? And so even though, as I told you before, South Carolina's motto is too small for a republic, too large for an insane asylum, I don't know that they're quite insane enough to elect someone simply because of her brother. Then again, New Hampshire's about to send a woman to Congress simply because of her mother. So, who knows? It can happen.
All right, Michael Graham, thank you on this Monday. Stay cool. We come back, Doug Tengden, talking about the economy. And is it just me? Do things seem like they're getting more expensive every weekend? And I was speaking, I'll just candidly say this, and Doug may want to comment on this, with a retired executive in the beverage industry. And he was telling me he stayed in touch. He's been retired just a couple of years. He stays in touch. He knows all the pricing in New England for things like, stuff you'd buy in a grocery store, on the aisles, and how much a liter of the beverage the company he used to work for, or a case, a 6-pack, and he said I what they're charging, and they haven't really increased production costs that much even with the higher energy cost. He goes, they're literally doubling what they were charging last year. So the prices you're feeling in the grocery store, and he goes, I know enough about the company. The hourly wages haven't changed much. He goes, they're really just doing it because they can. They're charging more because they can. And you wonder across the board how much that's happening, just little bits here and there. I told you about golf balls recently. I hadn't gone out and gotten some in a while. And I didn't go to like a private country club pro shop where you're going to pay more money for that. I was just going to one of these places where you usually get typically good deals on things like golf balls or a golf glove. And I wasn't buying the best Titleist. Let's just say Bridgestone is one of the brands. A sleeve of a box of 12 golf balls. It was hard to find any okay golf ball for 12 golf balls in a box for under $58, almost $60. And you're like, I remember a year ago, I think the same box of golf balls was like, $24.50. Wow, doubled. It seems like everything's doubled. Back on that with Doug Tengden, worldmarketadvisors.com, the economy. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, by the Pulse of a Nature. Poll question up on X this morning at the Pulse of a Nature. We're keeping it light. Big Powerball opportunity tonight. Are you going to buy a Powerball ticket today? Just curious how many people run out when it gets up, close, you can see not quite $1 billion, but not far away. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, by the Pulse of a Nature. Back in a moment.
107.7 W.
pulse of New Hampshire. You're listening to Good Morning New Hampshire with Jack Heath on the pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, welcome back. We have some WWE tickets for Thursday night, Southern New Hampshire University Arena in Manchester, SNHU. WWE live show this Thursday. If you're going to check out some professional wrestling, call number 5-603-228-2080, J-Dog, right? Thursday night?
Thursday night.
All right, we're going to switch gears. Doug Tengden, World Market Advisors, talking about the economy. Doug, I know you do this every day. You may think it's not confusing. I'm just going to say one thing, and it's not just about oil and gas prices. Each weekend, if I go out and support the local economy, whether it's, I'm just going to say this, whether you're playing around a golf somewhere and you're paying for it, or you grab something to eat, or you go grocery shopping a few times over the weekend, or you go to a restaurant, I think every single weekend it feels to me things are getting more expensive, Doug, than the weekend before. Every weekend it feels like that.
I think you're on the right track, Jack. And as a matter of fact, over the last year, real personal income has fallen. It's in the aggregate numbers. It's not just an issue of how you feel. At the same time, I'd say that the consumer products companies like McDonald's or like Philip Morris, they've been able to raise their margins. So, what you're feeling is real.
How many of these big brand businesses and companies that can control placement in a grocery store and they have power and clout in their marketing, how much are they just raising prices across the board because they can?
Yeah, I think they are. I think I don't know as I can put a number on it, but certainly, companies like Colgate or Procter and Gamble, they've been able to raise prices because while real income is falling, real spending is actually going up. So it's really quite striking. And at the same time, what is driving the real income is inflation, and inflation in some areas where you really don't have a choice. Like, utility bills are going up, and obviously we all see the price of gas. It's in our face every single day. Now the price of gas, that's a supply side thing. We got a supply side shock. These other things, we're seeing it because of tariffs. Tariffs pushed up prices, but also a lot of these companies, they're not just taking it in their margin. They're able to pass the prices through, and people are not balking at it.
All right. What specifically on this Monday is catching your eye, Doug Tengden, worldmarketadvisors.com?
Well, we're 3/4 of the way through earnings season, and earnings season has been a blowout again. We see it quarter after quarter, and that's helping the market grow dramatically. But I'm looking at what's happening globally, and I look at the name of the firm is Global Market Advisors or World Market Advisors, and I look at 1,500 companies around the world. The number of U.S. companies that are in the top 10% continues to shrink. If I look at the very top 15, only 5 of the top 15 are U.S. companies. It's quite striking how U.S. growth exceptionalism is kind of getting old. It's not just all about the U.S. anymore, and there's a lot of reasons behind that.
It's interesting. If you look at overall energy cost, that could be electricity, that could be oil, gas, diesel, overall propane, natural gas, overall energy cost year over the last 12 months, they've increased by almost 16 to 20%.
That's right. That's right. They've increased dramatically. It's not just the data centers, and it's not just the war. It's everything. I'll just leave you with this. There's an old market observer. His name is Bob Farrell, and we're at the point where his rule number 9 really applies, which is when all the experts and forecasts agree, something else is going to happen. And everybody's in agreement at this point. We're in a boom. The economy's great. Everything's going well. When everybody agrees, something else is going to happen. And I just think it's not a slam dunk. Something else is building. We were surprised by the .com crash. We shouldn't have been surprised by that. Go ahead.
Real quick, the only tool the Federal Reserve has is kind of like the supposedly the uninvolved referee of our economy is to raise interest rates to slow down consumer spending and borrowing. It's the only wrench or hammer they have, or screwdriver, right?
Well, actually, no. I think they have a lot of tools, one of which is regulation, and regulatory relief is a big deal.
Okay, but still, that's their big one. What can drive down the cost of everything if it's not interest rates, if they're not working? Because I don't think they are anymore. I think they could leave them unchanged. They could lower them. Inflation just seems to be going. The cost of everything, I don't think in the next year or two, I'd be shocked if things really come down. And I'm talking basic household items, chicken, groceries, eggs, milk. Everything seems expensive. Energy. What could drive corporations to start really charging less?
Jack, the cure for high prices is high prices. The cure for an uncompetitive market is competition. And this is not going to be popular, but I would say restricting imports has caused prices to increase, not just the cost of tariffs, but the lack of competition.
Yeah.
And so if you want prices to go down, you want a more competitive economy. If you want a more competitive economy, we need to encourage innovation and encourage competition, not by providing government handouts, but by getting government off of people's backs. So encourage innovation and creation. This economy has tremendous potential, but if the government stands in the way by favoring one group and favoring another group and having another favorite, that's not going to lead to low prices. That leads to oligopoly.
Great discussion. Doug Tington, worldmarketadvisors.com. Thank you, Doug.
Jack, have a great week.
All right. We come back, 10 o'clock hour, got a packed show for you. We'll tell you who won those WWE tickets.
Still waiting. Give us a call.
Okay, give us a call if you want to get those WWE tickets, 603-228-2080. That's this Thursday. Warm one in store. Going to get into the 80s on some more sun than clouds today, so another warm one. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. Jack Heath, back in a moment.